My name is Camille Hart, and I was 32 years old the day I stood on a brightly lit stage, applause echoing around me, and realized the seat reserved for my family in the front row was still empty. People always say silence can be loud. I never really understood that until I looked past the cameras, past the smiling executives, and saw that untouched chair sitting there like a deliberate question. How much more are you willing to give them? It was supposed to be my night. The promotion ceremony had its own email from corporate HR, its own printed program, its own carefully planned run of show. They called it a leadership recognition event, which was a fancy way of saying, we're about to separate the people we see as expendable from the people we intend to invest in. I'd been with the company for almost 9 years. I'd taken every thankless project, stayed late for every crisis, and learned how to be the person they called when something was on fire and everyone else had gone home. When the email hit my inbox, I forwarded it straight to the family group chat with a short message. Big promotion ceremony in 2 weeks. I'll save you seats in the front row. I imagined my mom's excited reply, my dad's awkward but proud thumbs up emoji, my little sister Olivia whining about the dress code but promising she'd be there. 2 days passed, no response. On the third day, my phone buzzed. One message from my mother. Can't make it, cruise with Olivia, booked months ago. That was it. No congratulations. No, we're proud of you. Just cruise. I tried not to let it land. I told myself they'd forgotten the date when they booked it. I told myself it was bad timing. That's what I've always done, given them gentler reasons than the truth. I did it when I worked 2 part-time jobs in college so they wouldn't have to co-sign another loan for Olivia's out-of-state tuition. I did it when I transferred back to a local campus because my dad said the family needed me around after Mom got laid off, only for her to get rehired 3 weeks later and never mention my transfer again. I did it every time Olivia called, crying about forgotten credit card debt, and I wired money with a knot in my stomach, telling myself, this is what big sisters do. I spent my 20s being the safety net while they treated my decisions like background noise. I told myself they loved me, even if they weren't great at showing it. That one day, it would all click into place for them. That one day, they'd understand what I gave up and they'd be proud. Not performative, not conditional, just proud. So when I walked into the company auditorium that humid Tuesday in mid-August, I tried to hold on to that fantasy. The air conditioning fought the heat, but I could still feel sweat at the base of my neck from the walk-in from the parking garage. Tables were set up with champagne flutes filled with orange juice, programs laid out in neat stacks, little branded notebooks with gold foil lettering at every seat. My coworkers arrived with their spouses, kids, parents, even a neighbor or two. People clustered in front of the stage backdrop, taking photos in their best outfits, laughing, hugging. I stood off to the side with my program in hand and watched. There was a little printed reserved sign on the front row seat with my name on it, plus 3 extra chairs taped off for family. Their absence wasn't an accident, it was a choice, and I felt it like a bruise every time someone else's dad clapped them on the shoulder, or someone's kid ran up the aisle yelling, "Mom, you did it!" I didn't feel angry. Not yet. Anger requires a kind of hope that this time will be different. What I felt was numb, like I'd already known they weren't coming, and I'd just been waiting for reality to catch up with me. When they finally called my name, I walked up the steps in heels that suddenly felt too loud on the wood. I shook hands with a line of department heads, smiling for the cameras. Then the company's top executive stepped forward. He's usually all business, never one for lingering. But this time, he held onto my hand a moment longer and gave me a look that didn't feel like the usual corporate script. "Congratulations," he said quietly, and pressed a slim envelope into my other hand. I assumed it was the formal promotion letter. I'd already signed an initial agreement, and HR had told me they'd go over the final version in person. I waited until I was off stage, away from the flash of cameras, before I slid a finger under the flap. Inside were 2 documents. The first was a confirmation of my promotion to Senior Program Director, title, responsibilities, all the things I'd already discussed. The second made my breath catch. A revised contract with a base salary that finally pushed me into 6-figure territory. Stock options. A quarterly performance bonus that could cover my parents' mortgage in a single payout. At the bottom, in ink that wasn't the standard corporate blue, was a handwritten note. Your leadership deserves more than just the title. Let's build something big. M. I didn't cry. I didn't even smile. I folded the papers, slid them into the inner pocket of my blazer, and went back to my empty seat. People clapped me on the shoulder, asked how it felt. I just kept saying, "Good, it feels good," because anything else would have cracked the thin layer of ice I'd built over everything else. That night, I ordered Thai food, cracked open a beer, and sat on my couch in the glow of the TV. Some late-night rerun played in the background, laugh track washing over the room like static. My phone lay face down on the coffee table. I didn't touch it until nearly midnight. When I finally picked it up, the screen lit up like it was having a panic attack. 74 missed calls. My voicemail icon looked like it was begging for mercy. At the top of the list, one text from my mother, time-stamped 11:02 p.m. "We need to talk." In the past, that message would have sent me into instant crisis mode. I would have called back breathless, apologizing for missing her attempts, asking if everyone was okay. This time, I just stared at the words. "We need to talk." About what, exactly? About how they chose a cruise over my ceremony? About how they'd missed the moment I finally stepped into something that was mine, something I hadn't sacrificed for anyone else? I set the phone down without opening a single voicemail. For the first time in my life, I felt no obligation to answer them. I didn't know it yet, but that small act, not calling back, not chasing, was the first crack in the foundation of our entire relationship. And once it started, there was no going back. The next morning, my phone started buzzing at 7 on the dot, like someone had set an alarm to drag me back into the old script. My mom, my dad, Olivia, cycling through one after the other. When one call went to voicemail, another came in. By 9, the missed call list was so long I had to scroll. By lunch, my email inbox joined the chorus. Subject lines stacked up like warnings. "Call us immediately." This isn't funny. Don't ignore your family. I pictured them somewhere on that cruise ship, maybe in a lounge with fake velvet chairs and watered-down cocktails, passing the phone back and forth, taking turns hammering my number, not because they were proud, not because they were sorry, because they'd finally realized I hadn't come running the second they snapped their fingers. At work, everything felt different. People I'd known for years suddenly looked at me with a mix of curiosity and cautious respect. Coworkers who'd barely said more than morning were now asking about my opinion on projects, inviting me to meetings to get your insight. The promotion had flipped a switch in how they saw me. Normally, that kind of attention would have made me uncomfortable. That week, it felt like armor. Every congratulations was another layer between me and the old version of myself that existed solely to solve other people's emergencies. By Wednesday night, my dad's number flashed on the screen again while I was rinsing dishes. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in me wanted to hear what he'd say when he thought he finally had my attention. I answered. He didn't bother with hello. "Camille, listen," he said, breathless, like he'd been rehearsing. "We didn't know the ceremony was such a big deal. Your mom and Olivia really pushed for this cruise, and it was already paid for. We figured you'd understand." I said nothing. I could practically hear him straining against the silence. "Family is family," he went on. "We should put this behind us. You've always been the dependable one, and that's not something to throw away over one night." One night. The phrase almost made me laugh. My entire adult life had been a series of quiet sacrifices they'd accepted like they were nothing. I was the one who stayed up late sending just a little help so the power company wouldn't shut off their lights. I was the one who rolled paint onto their peeling walls on my weekends, patched their leaky roof while they watched TV inside, picked up Olivia's forgotten credit card balances so collectors would stop calling. I had given up internships, friendships, and the freedom to say no so they could keep pretending everything was fine. And the one night I asked them to sit in a chair and clap, they were on a ship drinking mojitos. I didn't yell, I didn't explain. I didn't list all the times I'd prioritized them over myself. I just pulled the phone away from my ear and ended the call. No goodbye, no promise to talk later, just a clean, flat hang-up. 10 minutes later, my grandfather called. He never asked for anything, never hinted, never guilted. If he needed help, he'd say, "Can you?" And if I said no, he'd accept it and move on. When I saw his name, I actually answered without thinking. "I heard about the promotion," he said. His voice was rough with age but steady. "Congratulations." I felt my throat tighten. "Thank you," I managed. There was a pause, then his tone shifted. I also heard your parents skipped out on the ceremony. Of course they'd called him. Of course my mother had cried down the line about how I'd changed, how I was shutting them out. She called me sobbing, he said, confirming it. Said you were being cold. Said you're not picking up, not replying. Said you're not the same girl who always helped them. I sank into a chair. What do you think? I asked. He let out a tired little chuckle. I think they're not crying because they missed your ceremony. They're crying because they missed their last chance to remind you they own you. The sentence landed like a stone dropped into a deep well. They see it now, he continued. You've got something they can't control. Money, title, independence. They're scared. And when people like your parents get scared, they grab harder. I didn't say anything, but something inside me shifted into focus. He'd just given words to a feeling I hadn't been able to name. It wasn't that they didn't care about my promotion. It was that they cared more about what it meant for them than what it meant for me. By Friday, the strategy had changed. The angry voicemails softened into syrupy texts. We're so proud of you. We knew you'd make it. Celebrating for you from the ship. My mom sent a blurry photo of a sunset over the ocean with a caption, thinking of you. My dad added a picture of a cocktail with a winking emoji. Then Olivia sent hers, a neon drink with a paper umbrella, her hair tossed over one shoulder, lips pouty. Congrats, big sis, she wrote. Drinks on you when we get back, right? It was almost insulting how transparent it all was. They weren't reaching out because they'd had a revelation about how they'd treated me. They were rehearsing, warming up, getting ready for the real ask when they came home. I scrolled through their messages and realized I didn't feel anger anymore. Anger would have meant I still needed something from them, an apology, a reassurance, a promise to change. What I felt was colder and cleaner. Freedom. When my parents got back from their cruise, my mind was already made up. No more emergency transfers. No more late-night calls about overdue bills. No more dropping everything to fix problems they'd created and ignored. I wasn't going to storm into their house and scream about betrayal. I knew how that would end. I'd played out that scene 100 times in my head. They were professionals at flipping any confrontation into a story where they were the victims and I was the ungrateful, selfish daughter. I'd say, you hurt me, and they'd hear, you owe me, and twist it until I was apologizing again. So instead, I decided I wouldn't say anything. No big showdown, no dramatic monologue. My actions would speak for me. Silence would be my answer. The first test came sooner than I expected. On Tuesday evening, I was still at my desk wrapping up an email when my phone lit up with Olivia's name. Against my better judgment, I answered. Cam, she said, diving straight in. My car's in the shop. The mechanic says the transmission's shot. $2,000 minimum. I don't have it right now. Can you cover it? I swear I'll pay you back. Her voice had that familiar blend of panic and entitlement I'd heard since we were teenagers. I could practically overlay this call on top of a dozen others. My rent is late. My card got declined. I forgot about this bill. It always ended the same way. Me opening my banking app, her promising she'd send something when she could, and then nothing. But something was different now. I pictured my empty front row seat, the cocktail photos, the way they'd only started reaching out after realizing I hadn't reacted, the way my grandfather had said the word own. I didn't launch into a speech. I didn't remind her of all the times I'd bailed her out in the past. I just said, no, you'll figure it out. She went silent for a beat, like the call had dropped. What? I'm not paying for it, I said, calm and clear. You'll figure it out. Camille, come on, she snapped, her tone turning sharp. You make more than enough now. This is nothing to you. I swallowed the stings of that sentence. That was always the logic. My effort was invisible. Only the outcome mattered. I'm not doing this anymore, I said. Good luck. And I hung up. I sat there staring at my phone, waiting for the flood. Angry texts, calls, accusations. They didn't come, not right away. Instead, a strange quiet spread through me, like I'd just broken some invisible family law that had been strangling me for years. 2 days later, my dad called again. This time his voice was casual, almost friendly. Hey kiddo, how's work? He asked, asking about my projects, my coworkers, my office, like he cared about the details. 5 minutes in, he pivoted. Listen, he said, clearing his throat. We're a little behind on a couple bills. Just temporary. You know how it is. I was thinking maybe you could help out this month. It's not a big deal for you now with your new salary and all. That last part stopped me cold. My new salary? I hadn't told them what I was making. I hadn't told anyone outside of work the actual number. The contract wasn't public information. HR was obsessive about confidentiality. So how exactly did my dad know enough to call it not a big deal? Who told you that? I asked. There was a tiny hesitation, just long enough for me to hear it. Your mom talked to someone who knows someone in HR. Word gets around, he said. We're family, Camille. We don't need secrets between us. My skin prickled. Something about it didn't fit. HR didn't gossip about salaries. People didn't just casually know someone who could access that kind of data. And the way he said, we don't need secrets between us, felt less like a reassurance and more like a warning. I ended the call with some excuse about having to go, but the unease stayed with me long after I hung up. I couldn't stop replaying his words, the certainty in his voice when he talked about my money like it already belonged to all of us. For years, I'd believed the worst my family could do was ignore me when I needed them, or bleed me dry when they didn't. For the first time, it occurred to me that they might be willing to go further than that. And I had no idea just how far they'd already gone. I tried to shake it off, tried to tell myself I was reading too much into things, that maybe my dad had guessed, or maybe my mom had exaggerated something she overheard, but the doubt lodged itself like a splinter under my skin. I kept replaying his tone, confident, entitled, like my salary was family property he was merely reminding me about. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a half-eaten takeout container in front of me. I didn't even taste it. I just pushed the food around, watching the reflection of the overhead light ripple across the glossy surface. My phone sat next to my elbow, its screen dark. For the first time, it didn't feel like a communication device. It felt like a breach point. Around 10, my laptop chimed. New email. I almost ignored it. It came from an unrecognizable Gmail address, a random string of letters and numbers that screamed spam. But something made me open it anyway. Maybe intuition, maybe paranoia. The subject line froze me. They're planning something. The message was short. No greeting, no name, no request. Your parents have been digging into your finances. Ask yourself why. That was it. No links, no attachments, nothing that screamed phishing, nothing that asked for money or threatened me. Just a warning. I sat back slowly. My heart thudded in my chest, heavy and hard. If it had been a scam, they would have wanted something from me. But this email wanted nothing, except for me to know something I wasn't supposed to. I closed the laptop, I turned off the kitchen light. I sat in the dark, feeling the walls pull closer. Did my parents really call HR? Did they really push for details about my salary, about bonuses, about stock options? And, if so, what exactly were they planning to do with that information? The next 2 days passed in a blur. I'd stare at spreadsheets, at emails, at task lists, and my eyes would skim the words without registering anything. My coworkers would talk to me, and I'd nod at the right moments while my mind replayed the warning over and over. Ask yourself why. Friday evening, just as I was packing up, I heard my name. I turned and saw Mark, the senior accountant, not to be confused with anyone from my personal life. He was one of those quiet professionals who never lingered in hallways or gossiped or involved himself with anyone's business. The kind of man who did his job well and left on time. But tonight he didn't leave. He approached me instead. You got my message? He asked quietly. For a second, I didn't understand. My brain scrambled through possibilities until it landed on the email. I blinked. That was you? He nodded, his eyes shifting around the hallway to make sure no one else was listening. Payroll flagged the phone call. Your mother called last week, said she was helping you with your taxes and needed your income details. She pushed for bonuses, stock vesting schedules, compensation tiers. HR refused, and she pressed harder. My skin prickled. Mark continued. HR escalated the report to my team. I recognized your name. I didn't think you'd want it buried. Why tell me anonymously? I asked. He gave a small, humorless smile. Because if it came from me directly, I'd be dragged into a family mess, and I've seen how those go. He paused. Listen, I've worked here long enough to see patterns. When someone in the family gets money, real money, everyone else starts circling, and they don't stop, not until there's nothing left to take. A chill went through me, not fear, recognition. People don't change just because you earn something. If anything, they change more. They change into the truest version of themselves. Be careful, he said quietly, then straightened, gave a polite nod, and walked away. I stood there in the dim hallway holding my bag, my heart pounding in my throat. Everything inside me rearranged in a single moment, like puzzle pieces snapping into place. It wasn't paranoia. It wasn't imagination. It wasn't me being dramatic. My parents weren't just thinking about my money. They were strategizing. When I drove home, my grip on the steering wheel was tight enough my knuckles whitened. The entire ride felt like I was moving through fog, headlights carving tunnels in the dark. When I finally stepped into my house, I didn't even take off my shoes. I just leaned against the door, my breath catching in my chest. I thought the worst they could do was take advantage of me emotionally or financially, but now I started to see the larger picture. They wanted a piece, a share, a claim, a cut. And if they were already breaching company confidentiality, what else were they willing to do? I didn't have to wait long to find out. Saturday morning, I was making coffee when someone knocked. Hard, sharp, urgent. I opened the door to find my parents standing on my porch. They'd never shown up uninvited before, not once. My mom pushed past me into the house before I could say a word, fake warmth plastered across her face. My dad followed, hands in his pockets, expression tight. "We've been thinking," my mom started brightly, the tone she used when she wanted something. "Your father and I have decided we want to start a little business, maybe a cafe or a rental property, something stable, something for the family." My stomach dropped. "And since you're finally in a good financial position," she continued, "we thought you'd want to be a partner." My dad nodded like this was all perfectly reasonable. "It's a win-win," he said. "You'd benefit as much as we would, and it's time you give back. We've always supported you." That last line nearly stole the breath right out of me. Supported. He said it like the word meant something, like the years of taking and demanding and expecting had been gifts bestowed upon me. I stared at them. I didn't move. My mom kept talking, pushing the pitch harder, her voice speeding up as if she could talk me into submission. My dad leaned in, using the same pressure tactics he'd always used, framing everything in terms of obligation and guilt. "You owe us," he said finally, voice low, revealing the truth behind the smiles. And something inside me snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically. Quietly. Inwardly. Cleanly. "I have a busy weekend," I said, stepping back toward the door. "You need to leave." My mom's face flickered. Shock, then anger, then disbelief. "Camille, don't be like that." I opened the door wider. "You need to leave." They hesitated, realizing the old dynamics weren't working. Then my dad muttered under his breath about me being ungrateful. My mom knocked once more, softer, desperate. But I didn't open the door again. When their footsteps finally faded down the walkway, I stood in the silence of my living room, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. They weren't just asking for money. They were plotting around it. They wanted access, influence, control. And if this was their opening move, I had to start asking myself a harder question. If they were willing to manipulate HR and track my income, well, what else were they willing to do? After that doorstep ambush, something in me hardened into place. For years, I'd been cushioning my parents' every fall, smoothing over Olivia's mistakes, telling myself that taking care of them was what a good daughter did. But standing there in my own home with their entitlement still echoing off the walls, I realized something sharp and undeniable. They weren't asking for help anymore. They were planning around my life, like it was theirs. And I couldn't let that continue. So I didn't confront them. I didn't send long explanations or demand apologies. People like my parents don't understand apologies. They understand access. They understand benefits. They understand utility. The moment you stop being useful, their entire relationship with you changes. So I quietly started removing their access. The first cut was Olivia's emergency credit card, the one I'd opened under my name when I was 20 and stupidly believed she'd only use it for textbooks and groceries. It had slowly become her personal wallet, her bar fund, and occasionally her "oops, I forgot rent again" bailout card. I paid the balance one last time, closed the account, and deleted it from my banking app. Done. Overnight. One less pipeline into my life. Next was the gas bill. For years, I'd had it on autopay because Mom gets stressed when she gets shut-off notices. I logged in, removed my card, and let the responsibility fall back where it belonged. If she panicked when the bill came, it wasn't going to be my problem anymore. Then came the silence. Olivia texted twice that week. "Rent late again. Can you cover? Just this once. My paycheck hasn't posted. Can you spot me?" I didn't respond. Not with a no, not with a reason. Just silence. It was strange how peaceful the absence of noise felt, like a muscle unclenching after years of tension. I expected fallout, screaming voicemails, passive-aggressive posts, a full family meltdown. But that's not how it came. Instead, it came sideways. First, from my Aunt Linda. I hadn't heard from her in months, and suddenly she was calling with a sugary tone thick enough to pour on pancakes. I just wanted to check in, she said. Family is so important, and your parents have sacrificed so much for you. I almost choked. Sacrificed. For me. She rambled about keeping the family strong and supporting each other before slipping in. Your mother mentioned things are going really well for you financially. She said you're finally in a position to help out. Finally. As if the years of me keeping their lights on and paying Olivia's debts didn't count because I wasn't rich when I did it. I let her talk until she ran out of steam and hung up without offering anything. The next day, I got a Facebook message from my cousin Eric. Congrats on the big raise. Hey, listen, I've got this business idea. I didn't reply. Then came a text from an uncle I barely knew. Heard about your promotion. Proud of you. We should talk about an investment opportunity. My stomach dropped. They weren't just asking. They weren't just circling. They were organizing. And then came the kicker. My grandfather called. He didn't sound surprised, or confused, or hesitant. He sounded tired. Your mother's been running her mouth, he said. She told people you're buying them a house. My breath caught. A house? She's telling relatives it's time the family expands and that you're stepping up. He sighed. Half the family believes it already. The audacity of it hit me like a slap. My parents weren't waiting for me to offer anything. They had already promised my money as theirs, already planned my future contributions, already pitched the narrative to the entire family. I felt something icy slide down my spine. This won't stop, my grandfather said quietly. Not unless you stop it. Then he said something that changed everything. There's a family barbecue at your uncle's house this weekend. You should come. I hesitated. Why? So you can hear what they've been saying with your own ears, he answered. And so you can stop letting them define your story. He wasn't asking. He was giving me permission. So I went. Walking into that backyard felt like entering a marketplace, not a family gathering. Every head turned. Smiles stretched too wide. Congratulatory pats on the back came one after another, each layered with an unspoken question. What can you do for us now? My mother was in the center of a group of relatives, animated and glowing with importance. When she saw me approach, she didn't look guilty. She looked triumphant. Camille, she said loudly, pulling me into the center. Everyone was just talking about how proud we are, and once things settle, we're thinking of upgrading to a bigger place, something the whole family can enjoy. Isn't that exciting? She said it like it was already paid for, like the down payment was a formality, like I'd already agreed. My uncle clapped my shoulder. Family first, right? You're doing so well now. You're in a position to take care of everyone. My cousin Eric slid over. Hey, about that business idea. My chest tightened. The plate in my hand suddenly felt like a weight. I looked around at all of them, smiling, expectant, circling like polite vultures. And then I saw my grandfather, sitting in a lawn chair off to the side, watching me, not interfering, not rescuing me, but giving me that same small nod. Permission, again, this time to rip the mask off. So I did. I'm not buying anyone a house, I said. Loud, clear, steady. The entire backyard froze. I'm not paying bills anymore. I'm not funding businesses. I'm not fixing mistakes. I'm done being the family ATM. My mother's smile collapsed instantly. My dad looked stunned. A few relatives exchanged looks like they'd misheard me. My uncle cleared his throat. Now hold on. But my grandfather stood. And when he spoke, the entire backyard fell silent. Ungrateful, he said, turning to my parents. If anyone in this family has a right to use that word, it's Camille. She's the only one who ever carried weight. She paid your bills, your debts, kept your lights on, cleaned up your messes, and you took it like it was owed to you. Now that she's finally built something of her own, you want to bleed her dry. No one breathed. That's not family, he said. That's leeching. My mother's face drained of color. My dad's jaw clenched. A couple of relatives took a step back as if distance would absolve them. And let me make something perfectly clear, my grandfather continued. Don't expect a dime from me either. Camille is the only one in this family who understands the value of what she earns. She'll get my inheritance, not you. A bomb. Dropped cleanly, without hesitation. My mother sputtered. Dad, you can't. But he turned away from her, dismissing her like noise. I didn't stay long after that. I thanked him quietly, slipped out the side gate, and drove home with the windows down and the air crisp around me. For the first time in decades, I felt something that was almost foreign. Relief, lightness, freedom. The guilt was gone. The obligation was gone. The cord was cut. And I didn't feel 1 ounce of loss. In the 4 days after the barbecue, the fallout arrived exactly the way I expected: messy, dramatic, and in waves. What I didn't expect was how little any of it moved me. The same messages that once would have sent me spiraling into guilt or panic now felt like noise behind a closed window. My mother struck first. Her text came at 1 a.m., 3 a.m., 5 a.m., like she couldn't decide whether she was furious or heartbroken. The tone swung wildly from guilt-soaked pleas to sharp accusations. How could you embarrass us like that? We were blindsided. You humiliated your parents. 5 minutes later, we're proud of you. This family needs to heal. Let's just move forward. Like emotional roulette. My dad only called once. He didn't mention the barbecue, didn't mention the shouting, didn't mention the inheritance bomb my grandfather dropped. Instead, he said in a flat voice, "Things are tight this month. Can you help with the mortgage?" I hung up. Olivia finally chimed in with a series of voice notes, each one more unhinged than the last. She started with entitlement, shifted to victimhood, then landed squarely on rage. "You're selfish. You're abandoning your own family. You think you're better than us because you have money." But the part that really revealed her true intentions was the last line. "And I still need help with my car. I can't get to work until you send the money, Camille." I didn't even waste energy answering. She wasn't asking. She was demanding, as if she still believed my wallet was simply an extension of her life. The silence I gave her was the clearest answer she'd ever received. But the real surprise came from the extended family, the ones who stayed quiet during all the chaos. 2 cousins messaged me privately. One admitted she never realized how much I'd been carrying alone. Another apologized for believing my parents' version of events for years. "Your grandfather opened our eyes," she said. Even my Aunt Linda sent a short message, not sweetened or manipulative this time. "You didn't deserve what they did. I'm sorry." It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't closure, but it was honest. Then there was my grandfather. He called the night after the barbecue. He didn't ask how I felt. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't try to unpack the drama. He just said, "Proud of you, sweetheart. About time you stopped playing their game. Now go live your life." And that was it. Simple, direct, true. The most shocking part of those 4 days wasn't the backlash. It was the quiet that followed. My phone, once a constant source of tension, suddenly became a peaceful object. Calls stopped. Messages slowed. The family group chat went silent. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel dread when I saw a notification. I slept deeper, breathed easier, stopped checking my bank app every morning out of habit, started enjoying coming home to a place that finally felt like mine, not just physically, but emotionally. I realized something that felt strange at first. Silence wasn't emptiness. Silence was freedom. Without the constant drain of trying to keep everyone above water, I discovered what my own life sounded like. I went for walks without worrying about who might need something. I cooked dinner without calculating what I'd have to transfer to Olivia. I even read a book cover to cover for the first time in months. The more their voices faded, the more I felt like I was stepping into a version of myself I'd never had the chance to meet. A version that didn't flinch every time the phone rang. A version that didn't apologize for not being enough. A version that didn't say yes out of fear. A version that didn't bargain for affection. A version that wasn't defined by what she could provide. A version that finally understood she deserved more than being the family's safety net. A week later, I sat on my couch with takeout, the soft hum of the TV in the background, and a calm I couldn't remember feeling before. My phone buzzed. One single notification. For a split second, my old instincts tensed. Then I glanced at the screen. It wasn't my mother, or my father, or Olivia, or anyone asking for money. It was my grandfather. "Just checking in. Hope your week was peaceful." I smiled, genuinely smiled, and replied, "It was." And it was true. The quiet wasn't lonely. It wasn't cold. It wasn't empty. It was mine. Every bit of it. For the first time ever. I didn't lose a family. I lost the illusion of one. And in its place, I gained something better. My life back. My boundaries intact. My future no longer mortgaged to people who never planned to pay me back. I didn't need a dramatic reconciliation or a tearful reunion. I didn't need them to understand what they did. I didn't need them to see my worth. Because the freedom that comes from finally choosing yourself, that's worth more than anything they ever pretended to give me.